Phantom Limb by Lucinda Berry. There we go. I remembered. God, my hair looks crazy. Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm the Zodiac Reader, or Rosie Jenner, and welcome to my channel. My hand looks huge from this perspective. So today I'm going to be talking about my May reads. It was a bit of a slow month for me. I basically read every day of the first week of May and then not at all. So today's video hopefully won't be as long as my last, I guess. So to start off with, I had 3 5-star ratings and 1 2-star, which we'll get into. I read 2 thrillers, crime books, horrors, I guess. I read 1 romance, which ticks off that from my list because I've been trying to read romance really hard, and I read 1 autobiography, which again was another goal for this year, is that I really want to read more non-fiction, and I really struggle with that normally, so not a bad reading month, to be honest, considering that 3 of those are 5 stars. So without further ado, let me reveal to you what I thought was 5 stars. So first of all, I started with Perfect Remains by Helen Fields and gave this obviously a solid 5 out of 5. This story follows a detective on his new job. He's a Frenchman and everyone around the office seems to dislike him, but he sort of gets closer to one detective, you can probably guess, a female detective, and he basically is struggling to reckon with his past and move into this new setting, as well as solving this new crime in, surprise surprise, a quiet town. So I really enjoyed this one. I think that the office politics was a bit of a different spin on your average, oh my gosh, my life's a mess and I need to move and I'm a detective who's well renowned and now I've lost everything. It was very stereotypical, but I did not see any of it coming, and there just kept being more and more to this story. There is one storyline, no spoilers, that I really didn't get, at all. I didn't feel like it needed to be in there, but I have a feeling that it might follow on in the series, because I know it's a series. I think you can probably read them at different times and non-chronologically, but I'd be interested to see if in the next books that storyline continues, because long story short, they find an abandoned baby in a park, and I just did not get where this was going. It didn't really add anything to the actual murder. It was just another point of view that, I don't know, it was nice to see another case by his partner and see how that could potentially affect her, and again the office politics come into play there, but just, why was it in there? It felt like it took up a bit of the book, but nonetheless I really enjoyed this book. We had this supposed genius serial killer, and his reasons for killing weren't always clear, but I don't think that is necessarily what makes a serial killer, if you get me. His motivations, they weren't clear, but also he definitely had one, and they were questionable because they were quite superficial, but and yeah, I just thought that this was really fast paced. It read just straight from cover to cover. Absolutely would recommend it if you're in a reading slump, because this is such a pop thriller. It follows our detective. It has a tiny sprinkle of romance. It has an infuriating personal timeline, which comes back around to bite him in the ass, and I absolutely adored that part. I thought it was great. It touches on a lot of very hard-hitting subjects, particularly in the workplace, which I found very interesting. And now I'm just repeating myself, so let's move on to the next one. So for my second book, I read Phantom Limb by Lucinda Berry, and that was a crazy face. What do I say about this book? I hated it. I'm a very liberal marker, I would say. If a book gives me a good feeling, I will literally look past anything to give it 5 out of 5. You know, like, there could have been a lot of problems in in Perfect Remains by Helen Fields, but I really enjoyed it, and I came out of it thinking, wow, this is an almost perfect thriller crime. I can't fault it, so why give it less than 5 stars? However, Phantom Limb, how do we start it? For the most part, this is just trauma porn. If you want to read this book, for Perfect Remains, there is some mention of sexual assault. Obviously, it's very dark. There's a murder going on. This guy tortures his victims and keeps them for a long time. So that's a massive trigger warning, as you can imagine, in crime. Not Perfect Remains. What am I doing? Why is my head all over the place today? Lucinda Berry. Phantom Limb is just descriptions of self-harm for the most part, like almost all of it. There's a plot twist at the end that you're like, oh yeah, I could have seen that coming maybe. You know, there's some questionable, unreliable narrator stuff. To be honest, like, the writing style wasn't that bad, and the plot that it followed wasn't that bad, but we got less plot and more horrific scenes of self-mutilation. And to be quite honest, I love body horror. I really love horror, as you know. I love crime. I love thriller. However, if you are just purely going to write, like, a good half a book about someone self-harming and sort of making it into, like, the main feature of this book, oh god, it was just so, like, and then I'm pretty sure I read that she was, like, a clinical psychologist, and this really upset me, because that's what I want to be. I really, 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 really love my job in psychology and all of the different stuff that I do, and one of my favourite jobs to do is to work on a research project where I deal with very, very vulnerable people. And to read a book by a quote-unquote psychologist that was just so, I don't know, like, I think I don't want to be insensitive, because I think I read somewhere that she did deal with a lot of stuff when she was younger, and I don't want to invalidate her experience, and maybe she was writing just on her experience. But to me, it felt like a cold, older person who went into psychology for the money, didn't really understand what the feelings were going on, and decided to take her worst case, run with it, and make it into a novel. So you can guess this was the 2 stars. I'm gonna try not to rant about it anymore. Maybe I'll give her other books a shot, and we will do a deep psychoanalysis on what I think of Lucinda Berry, but needless to say, this was very, very disappointing for me. So, quickly before I talk about my 3rd book, I forgot to mention completely what Phantom Limb is about. So, Phantom Limb is basically about this step-twins, and one of them dies, and she ends up in a hospital, and it's basically her unravelling from there and figuring out where to go, how did her twin hinder her, how should she move on without this basically other half. It was a good concept, it really was, but again, not rememberable. I tried to block it out of my mind straight away because there was just so much, you know, unneeded commentary on self-harm that really doesn't match up with what I would like to see from authors. Anyway, book number 3. Book number 3 is a romance. And you'll be surprised to hear that I did give it a 5 out of 5. Turns out I'm a massive sop for romance, and I absolutely adore it. It just depends on if it's my cup of tea and if I can get into the writing style. And holy moly, You can already see this coming. Helen Huang is a genius. The Kiss Quotient was my third book of May, and I absolutely loved it. It was romantic, it was steamy, it had all of that suspense and angst, and was completely unrealistic. And I loved that. I saw a lot of comments like, oh, this is so unrealistic, like, you know, they just go into this, you know, working relationship and blah, 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 blah. But one thing we can all agree on is that the autism representation is absolutely on point and was done very, very well. The commentary across it was, you know, lightly handled. It had questions. It wasn't super unrealistic like a lot of books when people talk about autism or come to terms with it themselves and telling a loved one. And I thought that because obviously the book is about this girl who's obsessed with her econometrics or something, you know, it just fits into her character and also the author's personal experience of romance as an autistic woman. And I just think that it was just it was delicious. And you know, right at the end there is a sort of twist that leads you into the second book. You can guess what it is, and it is totally unrealistic, but the way that he does it is super sweet and catering to her autistic brain. So I really have to praise it for that straight off. So that being said, we have this econometrist, whatever, and she basically decides that she needs to go out there and learn to be better at sex. You can predict where this is going. It goes in all the directions that you think it is. I would just give a slight trigger warning. There is like a tiny bit of violence. Obviously, there's a lot of steam if you're not into that. And there is some mention of workplace, possible sexual harassment. However, don't let that stop you. I didn't get triggered by any of it. And if you've seen my other channel, I do work with and have experience with that sort of thing. And I loved this book so much. You know, I'm a very traditional woman. I'm a monogamist. I like to get married if I'm going to be doing the dirty with someone. And sweet Jesus. I thought I would hate this book. I really, really thought I would hate this book because she basically hires this escort and is like, no, I need you, only you, to teach me how to be good at sex. And then she sort of turns it into, actually, no, let's just forget about the sex completely. I need to learn how to have a boyfriend. Recipe for disaster, right? No. Oh my God. Normally I don't read romance because I feel awkward a lot of the time reading stuff like that. Maybe I'm just prude, but you know. And secondly, because I often find that they're very boring. And did this book feel formulaic? Have I read something like this before? Absolutely. Was the writing delicious? Was there a character who got jealous easily and was potentially very toxic, but was willing to go out of his way for his woman? Hell yes. So, I mean, I can't really speak about this book because I feel like everyone should read it if they're into steamy romance. I honestly thought I would hate this. And I sort of read it because I wanted to see how a romance could represent neurodivergent people. And I was pleasantly surprised by the outcome. Yeah. So the next book I read was non-fiction. I read Notorious RBG. Yes, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Her it's not a memoir. It's like a biography, I think. But it draws from her life, and this author basically had met her and was inspired by her, and you know, obviously we started calling her Notorious RBG after Notorious Big. And it follows her life. It's basically just a beautiful biography infused with everything that RBG was about. It talks about her life struggles, how she got to be there, how she got to be in the court, later life, what she influenced, all of the policies that she changed, how she shaped the world, pretty much. And it was just really inspiring to hear about this woman. You know, I've never known too much. I've tried not to delve into the personal lives of politicians, I guess. But RBG is one of those people that you kind of have to, because she's just so lovable, and who she is and her background as a Jewish woman, a Jewish mother, just, it's a part of her, and it obviously plays into who she became, and her impact on just everything women's rights is so incredible. So I definitely recommend this for absolutely anyone. I think if you're doing sociology or politics or literally anything that deals with rights and laws, you absolutely have to read this book, because, I thought she was incredible before, but maybe it's a bit of a stereotype, but once you get to know someone, it becomes even more amazing, especially what she's been through. So not to say what everyone else says, but definitely read that. It should be on the curriculum, and I really enjoyed this, and I gave it 5 out of 5. So in May, I gave 3 5 out of 5s, 2 of which I thought I would not rate highly. I don't normally rate like biography stuff because I don't really feel like I should be rating someone's life, but the way this was written, the way that it infused her past and her future and everything in between with quotes and flashbacks, I just thought it was brilliantly written. It read like a novel, and I would absolutely read something again by these authors. I can't remember what they're called, but Notorious RBG, just look it up. It's like the most famous memoir. So yeah, I mean, this was a great month, minus Phantom Limb, which was hugely disappointing. So before I film another thingamajig, which, I barely upload ever to any channel that I've ever started, I just wanted to talk quickly about how to survive as a spoonie in the book community. So, you know where this is going. All of the books that I read in May were actually audiobooks, and I absolutely do believe that whatever form of reading you're doing, it is valuable, and it is reading, and it is the literature. When I read a book, I hear my own voice in my head, and it feels like an audiobook, so sometimes I'll even forget if I read it or if it was an audiobook. So I think this is absolutely valid, and this is one of the ways that I've been able to read more as I've been battling my long COVID and chronic fatigue crazy story. And I think that there's this obviously very unhealthy obsession with, I read this much. Obviously in, I think in my first video about April, I did say, I read, is it 9 books or 7 books? I don't know. And everyone puts it in the title, and the more the merrier, and everyone's like, wow, how did you do that? And I do think that that's very fun. It's fun to set yourself a challenge, but it can be hard not to pressure yourself to make videos all the time, to read all the time, to vlog all the time. And that can be very, very, very tiring as someone who has limited spoons, quite frankly. So yes, when I talk about books I've read, maybe they were in paperback or hardback, but most definitely the majority are going to be an audiobook, and I definitely recommend this to anyone who is struggling, because I will literally sit there, and sometimes processing visual stimuli will set me off and make me absolutely just so ill and tired. Sometimes moving around really triggers me. Sometimes it will just literally be I'm having a bad day and I will just lie in bed in pain. And audiobooks have been such a good way to combat this sort of lonely, sad feeling that I get, this guilty feeling, because it makes you feel like you're keeping up with the book world and that you are actually doing something. When you enter a book, you're entering into another world, and that's such a stereotype, but it's true. So when you're just lying there listening to an audiobook, it almost feels like you're not chronically ill. So yeah, that's why I don't upload very often, and I do want to be very candid about my journey. If I film vlogs, I will obviously be showing me listening to audiobooks or coping mechanisms, and if you would like to see more of how you can be a more efficient reader and less pressured in the book community as a spoonie, then please do comment below. But on that note, I will leave you to it, and hopefully it won't be a month and a half until I upload next. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and I hope that you go out there with some ideas in mind. Maybe you hated romance and now you're willing to give it a shot. Maybe you hated non-fiction and now you're ready to read about RBG. But with that, have an amazing week. I hope that you've had a great time since I was here last, and I will speak to you again next time. Bye!